Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, how are you doing? All right? So I'm going to go faster. I'm not going to try and spin it out too much for you. We can get to the tea break. But I would like to make a couple of personal observations. I think I should characterize them that way. First of all, I thought that was a fascinating, very quick but fascinating run-through from Jeff, and I'm really keen to see how that's going to be operating when it's put in place, that model. Looking forward to seeing that. But my other observation as well was, having been sat here in the meeting all day and about to talk to you about what Wiley's been up to, particularly in Europe, part of me is thinking perhaps this is not quite right, the way in which we've been approaching this. And it feels to me a little bit that we really need to be taking much more stock of what you guys need to do here in South Africa or in Africa. And I get the sense that, I'm just about to effectively talk to you about what we've done in Europe. And while some of it you may feel is applicable, I'm not sure that a lot of it will be, and that you are in a very different place to many of these countries that we're going to be talking about. I just wanted to acknowledge that. I'm not sure that we have done perhaps so clearly, or certainly it hadn't been articulated to me, I don't think so clearly. So moving on, I am going to talk to you about supporting the transition to open access and giving you a few bits of insight into what Wiley has been up to. As Glenn mentioned, we did sign a pretty groundbreaking agreement in Germany in January. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how we actually arrived at that agreement and the journey that Wiley has been on, and where we expect to be going in the coming years. So I've had many conversations throughout the past few years in my time with Wiley, visiting with librarians and researchers, and also with society partners. And whilst everybody agrees we are on a road to transformation, there's very little consensus, I would say, as to what point we are on that road. It's not universally accepted that we're all in the same position, or even that we're aiming for the same goals. But I think Wiley's perspectives really arrived based on probably very recent market developments. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we have made decisions that we have made and what we expect for the future. This is the clicker, right? Or I could just go like that. There we go, it's probably easier. So I wanted to share this quote with you from a report published in Research Information called the Scholarly Publishing Research Cycle. Researchers are not getting legal access to the resources they need. Publishers are being vilified, rightly or wrongly, and libraries are feeling increasingly powerless to provide the service their users require. So if you accept that as a statement, and I think based on certainly what we've been talking about this morning, you probably would, then the current system is failing. And the changes that are happening are driven by a number of factors. And from Wiley's perspective, first and foremost, is what our customers want. What is it that our customers want, and are we delivering it for them? There are an increasing number of alternative methods to reading and publishing that are now available. And then there is the changes in researcher behavior, both currently and forecast as well, in terms of greater visibility and understanding of what it costs to publish. So we want to maximize the usability of scholarly research through open access and accompanying liberal licenses. I think that's a really important point to make, that Wiley as a publisher and also our many society partners share that goal, I would suggest, with the research constituency, with the scholarly comms community, that open access is a vital part of maximizing the usability of scholarly research, squarely in line with our mission statements. Whilst it's challenging for us to deliver those goals, we do have them in common. So I also wanted to share with you another quote as well from David Sweeney. David Sweeney, for those who don't know, is the head of the UK Research Innovation, UKRI, and is one of the coordinators for Coalition S. Essentially, the quote here that I've shown for David is showing a desire for greater financial transparency and efficiency that's required to go along with the benefits of more widespread open access. And I think someone else put this graphic up, didn't they? Sorry, thank you. And I think up until last year, Wiley had been taking relatively tentative approaches to really prove out whether that was the case from David's quotes. And we had piloted a number of agreements. We had one in 2015 with the Netherlands, one in 2015 with the UK, and one in 2017 with Austria. But it wasn't until our work with Project Deal that we really started to make inroads. But I'd like to take you back a little bit to November 2017. At that point, Wiley had already been speaking to Project Deal for about a year, and we'd reached a stalemate. We'd had some relatively broad scope for agreement, but perhaps echoing what Jeff was saying about the Elsevier and CDL experience, we were miles apart on what both parties expected the cost to be, both how Wiley valued the services that we were being asked to provide and what Project Deal was prepared to pay. So at the risk of oversimplifying at Wiley, we had a fundamental choice to make. Do we defend our position? Do we look at ourselves as the 200-year-old traditional publisher and stick to the work that we've always done? Or do we take the opportunity to become a more progressive partner in the scholarly ecosystem? So there are some other issues that we needed to consider in making that critical decision. We really had to articulate who the key influencers were on the other side of the table who were affecting this change. And I think, again, it was already been referenced earlier today, that in order for that change to occur, there needs to be a broad consensus, not just from librarians, but also from faculty, from funders, and from government agencies. And increasingly, not just in Germany, but in other countries as well, we as a publisher are recognizing that there are more and more players, if you like, on the other side of the negotiating table who have a greater influence. We also recognize, again, has been referenced, that there are alternative access methods. We could debate the legal and ethical implications of facilities such as Sci-Hub, but ultimately they're there. And then more, perhaps from a publisher perspective, acceptable methods through ResearchGate or on paywall. We also needed to think about, from Wiley, our position and our commitment in certain markets. So with Germany, for Wiley, we have over 500 employees in Germany. We have close to 4,000 editorial positions taken up in Germany on our journals, and we publish about 10,000 articles. And then lastly, we needed to do some pretty substantial work internally as to what we thought the future might be if we made certain decisions for us as a publisher, which involves a lot of data crunching, a lot of spreadsheets and PowerPoints and soul searching as well, frankly. And also thinking about the pace of change that we could be comfortable with, and also talking about the actions and reactions of customers, not just those that we were brokering agreements with, but those around the world, and also, importantly, the actions and reactions of the over 600 societies that Wiley publishes for as well. So a huge amount of work, and we came to the rather inevitable conclusion that we couldn't make any concrete prediction as to the future. We have no crystal ball. But we did know one thing, that we needed to adapt to what our customers were asking for us, and we needed to do that soon. And everybody in Wiley bought into this. Everybody up from our chief executive, who himself actually took a personal role in discussions in Germany, and also Wiley's board of directors. So we had true alignment that Wiley wanted to make a step forward into the unknown. So we had to adapt. We couldn't simply not respond, and we couldn't simply ignore what was happening. We often talked in Wiley about the Kodak moment, where there's one example, and there are many of them in industries where organizations or companies ignore change, or they fail to act on change, and they become obsolete. That is not what Wiley wants to do, and why we have made the decision that we have done to move forward with Deal. But I think what else we managed to achieve over a period of time, certainly with Deal, was build up a great deal of trust and collaboration to really get a level of respect on both sides that from our perspective was essential so that Deal recognized the role that publishers play and the value that we can bring to the scholarly ecosystem. But in dealing with other countries in the last few months, we've seen similarities in the approach. We've seen national level resolutions, again, with many players, both from the government and from funding agencies, but also from faculty. And increasingly, those groups represented on the other side of the negotiating table. However, we have seen variance in the approach. We've seen variance in the expected pace of change and rate of transition. We've seen variance in the resources available, frankly, to point at transitional agreements. And whilst we have seen broadly a unified consensus from different groups, the level of unification can also differ as well, which itself plays into some challenges for us. And that's why, Germany aside, you've seen some variances in the sort of deals that we have done. So with Germany, we have our agreement, which is publicly available, and you can read the agreement that we signed with Germany. It's available to all, that publish and read approach for immediate transition. We recently also this year signed agreements in Norway and Hungary, where we have agreed a more gradual rate of transition towards 100% open access. In a stepped way, not dissimilar to the way in which Jeff was describing a move of subscription revenue through to open access, and we're migrating investment from one to the other. In Norway and Hungary, though, not all institutions, academic institutions, are involved. Most are, but not all. And there's a more transparent evaluation of the value of reading and publishing than there is in our Germany agreement. And then most recently, we've also signed an agreement in the US, which is the first time Wiley's done something like this. It's not transitional or transformative in the same way other agreements are, but we've agreed a centralized fund to support OA publishing for a subset of institutions within that consortium. And we're very excited that that is effectively a first small step towards a more transformative agreement in the future with Ohio Link. So all of those agreements are slightly different. They're all in the main publicly available for you to read and look at the details of them. I'm going to be here at the conference, and whilst I'm not going to go through line by line the detail of those agreements, I would very much welcome anybody coming to see me to talk about the details of those. But each agreement does have unique features dictated by the status or the state at which that country has moved towards open access, the current situation, the intent, but they have core tenets to all of them. They all involve consolidation through one single partner of all reading and publishing. They also involve substantial financial commitment. Now, I'm not talking about the payments made to Wiley or the fees that we charge for those agreements, but I'm talking about the financial commitment to resources within that region or that country. Our experience in all of these agreements that we've reached is that there is a substantial requirement for investment in infrastructure, that there is a substantial requirement investment for financial services to manage what we've seen is, I think I would probably characterize it as a rebalancing, if you like, within a particular group in terms of who's paying what and who's committing to what. But also investment in an administrative body to help manage that process through those institutions. And the other core tenet through all of these agreements is that we've managed to protect author choice. Author choice remains unimpeded. Authors can choose to publish open access, and we work with our customers to drive that choice to be as prominent and as prevalent as possible. And the editorial process that our journals and our society partners apply to our journals remains unimpeded. So, where's Colleen? I stole this slide, Colleen, I think, from Max Planck. I think this is actually quite interesting. So this is showing you where we've done these recent transitional deals. The UK shaded slightly differently because of the pilot agreement we did a few years ago, and I don't think it's any secret that Wiley are talking to JISC collections right now. But if you include the UK, you can see that we've got a long way to go in terms of affecting universal change within the Wiley article portfolio around the world. So from our perspective, we're not yet at the tipping point, the oft-referred to tipping point. But we do firmly believe that as a publisher, we have very clearly set ourselves on the road to transition. And as I said before, what we're unclear about is where that road is going to take us, but we believe it's better to be on that road, driving forward for change rather than resisting it. And we've learned the importance of flexibility in the agreements that we have reached, and listening and adapting to individual circumstances and preferences of the different customer groups that we talk to. So what next for Wiley? Well, these deals take a long time. So the Netherlands deal took us 4 years to reach a consensus on. Norway and Hungary slightly quicker, took us 2. And deal took us 3 years of meetings to negotiate and agree. And even when we've reached final agreement with Germany, we still had initially upon signature a 6-month bedding in period, if you like. And in fact, next week, we will be launching finally the full publish and read program with Deal and with the Max Planck Digital Library. But all of these agreements, we like to think, that we do believe, are mutually sustainable. And mutual sustainability is a really key word when it comes to negotiating these agreements for Wiley. Sustainability so that we can continue to provide the services that are required of us from our customers, but we can effect a transition that enables us to maintain the level of that service. We've also learned the importance, as I've already stated, of the investment, and I should state it on both sides, of operational effectiveness and admin and managing of the workflows required in order to effect the change as quickly as possible. But also what we've managed to do in all of these agreements is continuously think about the author. And the author remains the focal point for us. And I think perhaps if I were to characterize where Wiley realizes we need to up our game, it's in that area. It's in a greater focus and understanding of what it is that our authors require from us, both those that we publish with now, but also those that are looking to be published in the future. And as a publisher, I think we have managed to establish that we are prepared to compromise and take some short-term pain in order to effect that transition. And we are investing in what matters most to our authors. We're looking at improving the speed of publishing, improving our peer review, and developing greater discoverability of our content. So all of our agreements are in the spirit of that partnership, and they do require resources to manage those articles and rebalance fees and monitor publications and the impact and advancement of research, both locally and also globally. So when we launched the deal agreement, it was off the back of a talk from our head of research business, a lady called Judy Verses. And Judy talks a lot about how important it was for us to be seen to be making a change. And she used an analogy, very simple one, but I think fairly effective. She talked about being in the driving seat. She said it's much better to be in the driving seat than in the back seat being driven. And I think that kind of sums up the decision that Wiley has made, that we don't want to be seen to be effectively dragged, if you like, towards a transformational event in our industry, and we want to be part of that transformational event and be involved in driving its direction. The other thing I would say as well that we've learned is that adversarial approaches or aggressive language used in negotiations is self-defeating. And I think that was another thing we learned very clearly from our negotiations with Deal. The moment that both sides realized over the time that we had spent negotiating that we'd already learned quite a lot about each other, and we came to those negotiations in the spirit of trying to find a mutually sustainable partnership, that's where things really started to happen. And that was then reflected in the agreements that I've listed already in Hungary and Norway, and also in Ohio Link. The moment that you start talking about a partnership and looking at ways in which you can work together, it really changes the entire paradigm. 1 minute. So that's my urgent, my call out to you, please, when negotiating with publishers, please try not to think of us as your adversaries in this regard. I work for a Wiley, a publisher that employs 5,000 people, all of whom feel just as passionately about the advancement of science as you do. And please remember that when you are talking to us about the transition to open access. We want to be a progressive partner to research ecosystems, And ultimately, we want to adapt to meet customers' needs and build that mutually sustainable partnerships that help all of us play a part in the global transition. But it's complex and it's multi-layered, and it's still, frankly, uncertain. But I will leave you with one last analogy, if I may, slightly worse than the car one I tried earlier. So you know when you go on a log flume, you go down the chute, and you go at the top, and you're looking down, and it's an incredibly long way down. And as you actually go down, it's pretty terrifying, and you get a bit wet, and it's not quite that comfortable. Then you get to the end, and it feels very serene. I think for me, again, maybe this is more of a personal thing. This is why it's so exciting to be working at Wiley at the moment. That we've sort of embarked upon this log flume now, and we are driving down that fast, rapid chute. And it is fun, it gets a little bit wet, and it gets uncomfortable at times. But we firmly believe that we can work to get to that calm blue water at the end. So that might be slightly more of an emotive talk than you were expecting. As I said, if there are more things and details you would like to know about our agreements, I'm very happy to talk to them in nauseating detail. So please do approach me. I'm about to get kicked off, so I will stop. Thank you.
So Ben, thank you very much. I think the adrenaline junkies in the audience are getting really excited. We're going to take one or two questions, if there are any, for all the speakers in the group. Yes, Ellen.
Shall I stay here?
Thank you. For Ben, yes, very emotive, but frankly, I also have to say, I don't think Wiley actually really had a choice, and I don't think any of the publishers. I think this is just a survival for Wiley, that they have taken this approach. And because if they really so much want to do what authors and what everybody needs and to advance society, why don't you just go completely gold open access with all your journals? I know you have to survive also in terms of funding, but I don't buy this whole story about, how really you want to do this, for the community. I actually want to find out how much, I know it's complex, but how far is Wiley prepared to go, really, to solve this problem? Because it's not sustainable even in terms, but that's why my question to you, in terms of some of the agreements, and maybe not, as you say, you can't go into the detail, but does some of the agreements that you have now signed and concluded, does it include, is it additional money that they put in, or is it still also coming out, is it the same deals? I know you said it's not quite, it's transitional or not transformative. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, I just want to get an idea of the deals that you've signed.
We need to move.
Well, first of all, yes, you come and see me, and we will go through, as I said, in nauseating detail through those agreements. I mean, I would say as well, when you look at the detail, you can see, if we take the deal agreement, for example, and I think Gerard Meyer might be dialing in at some point, certainly on the panel, you'll see that that's essentially cost neutral in Germany. So Wiley is not looking to grab huge increases in order to affect the transition. But what we are doing is, I guess, regulating in partnership the rate of that transition in a way that suits whichever customer that we're agreeing with. And I think the other thing to remember as well is, are we doing this just because we need to survive? No, I don't think that would be fair at all. I think you mustn't forget also we have all of those society partners who we have brought along in this. So we've had to effectively sell to them the same idea of being at the forefront of transition. And I think if we were looking just to survive, we would not have taken that approach. And lastly, I would say, again, if we wanted to just survive, you wouldn't have seen Wiley sign, I think, 5 agreements in the past few weeks, few months. There would be a lot more of a gradual approach to the agreements that we reached. So I think all I can say, perhaps in conclusion, is you'll have to believe me and see by our actions whether we're going to deliver on what we say we're going to do. I think we've made a good start. You saw from that slide with all the articles that we have yet to transition to open access that we have a long way to go. But we firmly believe we are now driving towards a far greater prevalence of open access in the publishing environment.
Right. Thank you very much, Ben.